The dust hadn't settled from last night's storm when Dr. Thomas Brighton heard it, a sound that made his blood turn cold in the pre-dawn darkness. It wasn't the usual chorus of birds greeting the morning, nor was it the gentle lowing of cattle in the distance. It was something far more ominous, the thundering of hundreds of hooves, moving in coordinated rhythm, surrounding his modest medical practice and ranch on the outskirts of the New Mexico territory. From his bedroom window, Thomas peered into the gray light of dawn and felt his heart nearly stop. Every road, every path, every possible exit from his property was blocked by mounted Apache warriors, their silhouettes dark and imposing against the slowly brightening sky. Thomas Brighton was not a wealthy man. He had come west 5 years earlier, fresh from medical school in Boston, filled with idealistic notions of bringing modern medicine to the frontier. What he found was a harsh reality of poverty, violence, and deep-seated hatred between the Apache people and the white settlers who had taken their land. Most doctors refused to treat Native Americans, citing danger, lack of payment, or simple prejudice. Thomas had tried to be different, but even he had been cautious, treating Apache patients only when they came to him in town, never venturing onto their land, always keeping a professional distance that protected him from the dangerous politics of the territory. That had all changed 3 months ago when a desperate Apache man had appeared at his door in the middle of the night, carrying a small girl of perhaps 8 years old. The man's face was etched with terror and exhaustion, and he spoke only broken English, but his meaning was clear. His daughter needed help, and no one else would provide it. The girl, whose name Thomas would later learn was Kaya, had been trampled by a horse weeks earlier. Her left leg had been badly broken, and without proper medical care, it had healed incorrectly. She could no longer walk without excruciating pain, and the leg had begun to show signs of infection that could soon turn deadly. Thomas knew that treating her would be complicated and controversial. The girl would need surgery to re-break and reset the bone, followed by weeks of careful recovery and physical therapy. It would mean the girl staying at his ranch, under his direct care, for an extended period. It would mean late nights, depleted medical supplies, and the very real risk of retribution from his white neighbors who would see his actions as sympathizing with the enemy. Apache and settler relations were at an all-time low. There had been raids, reprisals, and massacres on both sides. The military was preparing for a major campaign to force all Apache onto reservations, and tensions were explosive. But when Thomas looked into that little girl's eyes, dark and deep with pain and fear, he saw only a child who needed help. He saw a human being suffering, and he had taken an oath to heal, not to judge based on race or politics. Against every rational thought telling him to refuse, against the warnings of his conscience about the danger he was inviting, Thomas agreed to take Kaya as his patient. The surgery was one of the most difficult procedures Thomas had ever performed. Working by lamplight in his small surgical room, with only basic anesthesia and primitive tools by Boston standards, he carefully re-broke the girl's leg and set it properly. The father watched from the doorway, his face a mask of controlled emotion, his hand never far from the knife at his belt. Thomas understood that if his daughter died on that table, he might not live to see morning. But the surgery was successful, and Kaya survived. What followed were 3 months of intensive care and rehabilitation. Kaya stayed in a small room in Thomas's ranch house, and her father, who Thomas learned was named DeSoto, camped nearby, watching over his daughter and the doctor with equal vigilance. Thomas taught Kaya exercises to strengthen her leg, crafted special braces to support her healing bones, and patiently worked with her day after day to help her relearn how to walk. The girl was remarkably brave, never crying out even when the therapy caused obvious pain, and slowly, miraculously, she began to improve. During those months, something unexpected happened. Despite the language barrier and cultural divide, Thomas and DeSoto developed a cautious respect for one another. DeSoto began to help around the ranch, repairing fences and tending animals, refusing to be seen as a charity case. Thomas learned a few words of Apache, and DeSoto's English improved. Kaya became a bright presence in the lonely doctor's home, her laughter a sound he hadn't realized he'd been missing. For a brief time, the hatred and violence of the territory seemed very far away. The breakthrough came on a golden afternoon in late autumn. Thomas was working in his office when he heard DeSoto call out. He rushed to the porch to find Kaya standing, truly standing without assistance, taking hesitant but determined steps across the wooden floor. Tears streamed down DeSoto's weathered face as he watched his daughter walk for the first time in months. The man turned to Thomas, grasped his hand, and spoke words in Apache that Thomas didn't fully understand, but the meaning was clear. A debt had been incurred that could never be adequately repaid. The next morning, as the sun rose and the family prepared to leave, DeSoto spoke to Thomas in his halting English. "My people will know what you have done," he said solemnly. "You gave my daughter back her life. This is a debt of honor. Remember this, Doctor." With that cryptic statement, DeSoto lifted Kaya onto his horse, and they rode away toward the mountains, leaving Thomas standing alone on his porch, wondering what those words truly meant. That had been yesterday. Now, as Thomas stood at his window watching the dawn reveal the full extent of his situation, he understood with terrible clarity what DeSoto had meant. Every road from his property was blocked by Apache warriors. Thomas counted at least 500, possibly more. They sat motionless on their horses, forming an impenetrable barrier. No one could enter his land, and more importantly, no one could leave. Thomas's mind raced through possibilities. Had he somehow offended them? Was this retribution for some unknown slight? Had Kaya's recovery failed after they left? His hands shook as he dressed quickly and stepped out onto his porch, the morning air cold against his face. As he appeared, a ripple of movement went through the assembled warriors, but they held their positions. From the center of the blockade, a single rider emerged. Thomas recognized him immediately. Not DeSoto, but an older man whose bearing and elaborate dress marked him as a leader of significant importance. The man rode forward slowly, deliberately, until he was close enough for conversation. He dismounted with the fluid grace of someone who had spent more of his life on horseback than on foot, and approached Thomas. His face was weathered like ancient stone, his eyes sharp and penetrating. "I am called Nantage," the man said in surprisingly clear English. "Among my people, I am a chief. The girl you healed, Kaya, is my granddaughter. Her father is my son." Thomas felt a new wave of understanding wash over him. He had healed not just any Apache child, but the granddaughter of a chief. The implications were staggering. "I am honored to meet you," Thomas said carefully. "Kaya was a brave patient. It was my privilege to help her." Nantage studied him for a long moment. "Words have reached us that the soldiers are coming. They plan to force our people onto the reservation lands, to march us away from the mountains that have been our home since the beginning of time. They say this campaign will begin today, and that all settlers who have helped our people will be arrested as traitors, their property seized." Thomas felt his stomach drop. He had heard rumors of a major military operation but hadn't known it was imminent. "We have also learned," Nantage continued, his voice grave, "that you are on a list. The military commander has declared that any white doctor who treats Apache is an enemy of the territory. They are coming for you today, Dr. Brighton. They intend to arrest you, to make an example of you to discourage others from showing mercy to my people." The chief's words hung in the air like a death sentence. Thomas understood now. The blockade wasn't to trap him, but to protect him. "My warriors surround your land," Nantage explained. "No soldier can reach you. No one who wishes you harm can pass. You saved my granddaughter's life when no other white man would. You treated her not as an Apache, not as an enemy, but as a child in need. You asked for no payment, you risked your reputation and safety, and you gave her back the ability to walk. This is a debt that cannot be measured in gold or silver. Among my people, such a debt is sacred." Thomas was overwhelmed, barely able to process what he was hearing. I only did what any doctor should do," he stammered. "But you did what no other doctor would do," Nantage corrected firmly. "That is the difference between a man of honor and a man of mere words. My warriors will hold this position for 3 days. In that time, I urge you to prepare. Gather your most precious belongings, your medical supplies, anything you cannot bear to lose. On the 4th day, we will escort you north, to the border territory where the military's reach is weaker. There, you can continue your work in safety, and my people will know where to find you when they need healing." "You're offering me sanctuary," Thomas said, the full magnitude of the gesture hitting him. "But what about you? If the military finds out you've interfered, It could give them justification for worse actions against your people. Nantage's expression softened slightly. A life saved demands a life protected. This is our way. Besides, he added with a hint of a smile, the soldiers will find it difficult to prove anything. By the time they navigate the canyons and arrive here, we will be like smoke in the wind. They will find only a doctor who remained on his property, harming no one, waiting for patients who never came. Over the next 3 days, Thomas witnessed something extraordinary. The Apache warriors maintained their blockade with military precision, turning away the occasional traveler or curious neighbor with polite but firm insistence that the doctor was unavailable. Meanwhile, Apache women and elders came to Thomas's ranch, bringing gifts of food, blankets, and medicine herbs. They helped him pack his most valuable possessions and medical equipment, carefully wrapping everything for the long journey ahead. On the second day, Kaya herself appeared, walking with only a slight limp, her face radiant with health. She presented Thomas with a carefully beaded leather pouch, a gift she had made with her own hands. Through a translator, she told him that he would always be family to her people, and that wherever he went, he would be under their protection. On the morning of the 4th day, just as Nantage had promised, Thomas found himself on horseback, his belongings carefully loaded on pack animals, surrounded by a large group of Apache escorts. In the distance, he could see dust clouds that marked the approach of military cavalry, but they were still hours away. The Apache had timed everything perfectly. As they rode north into the rugged mountains, Thomas looked back one last time at the ranch he was leaving behind. He had come west to bring healing to the frontier, and in doing so, he had learned that humanity transcended the artificial boundaries of race and culture. He had discovered that honor and gratitude existed in unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest rewards came not from wealth or recognition, but from simply doing what was right when no one else would. Nantage rode beside him, and as they climbed higher into the mountains, the old chief spoke again. "You will be remembered in our stories, Dr. Brighton. For generations, our people will tell of the white healer who restored a child's ability to walk, who risked everything to show mercy. And they will tell how 500 warriors blockaded the roads to protect one man's life, because some debts can only be repaid with absolute loyalty." Thomas never returned to his ranch. He established a new practice in the border territories, where he continued to treat anyone who needed help, regardless of their background. Apache people traveled great distances to see him, and word spread among other tribes of the white doctor who could be trusted. He lived modestly but richly, surrounded by the respect and gratitude of people from many cultures. And on cold nights, when he looked at the beaded pouch Kaya had given him, he remembered that morning when he woke to find 500 warriors protecting his life, and he understood that he had witnessed something rare and precious, absolute honor, paid for with a simple act of helping one little girl walk again.